Hello, beautiful patrons. This is your Sunday message. Let's get back into part 2 of Do We Have Control? The last paragraph we read, we will repeat, where the author says, this theory usually comes bundled with an incriminating assumption that there's an obvious right way to be. If you have complete control over whether you are resentful or forgiving, and if forgiveness is the obvious right thing to feel, then if you're resentful instead of forgiving, you failed. The author goes on to say, I don't believe there's an obvious right way to feel. Sure, by word choice, one can give the false impression that there is, but there isn't. Should you be resentful, a negative sounding thing, or forgiving, a positive sounding thing, makes it sound obvious how you should feel. But if you reframe the same situation as a choice between upholding high standards, a positive sounding thing, and failing to respond to substandard behavior, a negative sounding thing, suddenly it's not so obvious what is the right way to feel. Unlike the positive psychologist, I don't believe positivity is always the answer. He goes on in the next paragraph to say, still, we most often hear the total control theory of emotions accompanied by advocacy of a particular position. Stop feeling X, and you can. It is within your power to do so. The Secret is another example. It urges for a supposedly apparent positive attitude. It argues for a supposedly appropriate positive attitude, but it also assumes that you have a lot of choice about what you feel. Total control theory could also be called the jukebox theory of emotion. You get to pick the tune, and clearly, to some extent, you do, or else in the scenario above, you couldn't turn a low probability of calm into a high probability of calm. I love this illustration of a jukebox of emotions. This is exactly what is presented to us, at least indirectly, within our Christian experiences, or let me say my Christian experience. I remember once my first pastor, Brother Lloyd Jean, he told this fabulous story about trying to put on a perfect Christian witness right after he had gotten saved and possibly even gotten the Holy Ghost, because he started out Methodist. In front of his co-workers, I think it was at a plant, some form of rowdy construction environment, riding home with them, carpooling with them. And the illustration he gave, supposed to have been a true life story, was that they would pick at him, they would jeer him, they would try to tempt him, they would try to shame him and ridicule him for his stance, for not participating in the language, not participating in their jokes, and in particular, in this case, not participating in drinking their beer with them as they would head home. Once again, all carpooling together. So in this story, he says that this evening, after a hard day's work, heading to their respective homes, that a person in the back seat had asked him if he wanted a beer, and he had said no. And the guy intentionally slightly shook the can so that whenever he popped the top right behind Brother Jean's head, it shot, splattered beer on the back of his head and neck. And he goes on to say that it took everything that he could do to not get angry about that and retaliate. Later on, he would tell that story in a way as to indicate that your ability to not retaliate when beer is splattered on the back of your head is directly proportional to the size of the guy who is splattering the beer on the back of your head. And I think in so many ways there's some great truth to that. Now, don't get me wrong, there's times that we get angry or we get hurt to the point that we might retaliate regardless of the size of the individual. And I'm sure neurology plays a huge part in that. But using that just as an example, isn't it true, though, that there are times that we behave ourselves, or at least find the power to behave ourselves more appropriately when the consequences of not doing so are greater than at other times? And so this is a very, very interesting thing, because I like the direction that the author is going, because it sounds as if he's going to eventually say to us, you don't have as much control as self-help tries to promote that we have. But at the same time, there are situations where we do have some control. As free thinkers, as rationalists, I think it's okay for us to find our own footing, even if our footing in these areas sets on two different sides of the fence. So let's go a little bit further and see what he says in the next paragraph, and then we'll close it for this Sunday. Competing with the total control theory, there's another bit of controversial wisdom about emotional control that is also quite prevalent. We could call this the no control theory. You feel what you feel, and there's nothing you or anyone can do about it. No control theory doesn't seem to have proponents who advocate it explicitly. Rather, it's implicit in what we say when we want our emotions to have an effect on others. Look, we say, it's just how I feel. Get used to it. Or, hey, I'm just reporting. As though emotions are like thermometer readings. There's one emotion per instant. You can read it out loud or not, but it is what it is. Implicit allusion to the non-control theory is a way to say, take it or leave it, but I ain't going to change it. It's a way of sending a clear, if stubborn, signal. I think that's a great place to leave off for this message today, mainly because I get a little bit of a feeling that this is more of our attitude in the secular movement, and I'm intentionally not addressing the comments that some of you have made just because I want to keep leaving the conversation free for you to make those comments, and I don't want to support nor counter anything that's being said, so please keep leaving the comments. But I do feel like if I had to choose one theory over the other as what I see most expressed within the secular movement, it would be the take it or leave it. This is who I am, and this stands to reason, because if you go as high up the thought food chain as social justice, looking at something as controversial as transgender issues, any type of issues like that, homosexuality, bisexuality, all of the different types of sexualities, all of these things have a certain amount of, this is who I am, this is what I feel on the inside, this is an expression. I'm just reporting to you what I'm experiencing, what I'm witnessing here. And so it would stand to reason that in many ways that would trickle its way down all the way to, hey, I'm angry, this is just who I am, you have to deal with it, I can't change it, or I'm not going to change it. So, I'm not saying that that is a criticism in any way of the secular movement, or that that is a generalization that I would stick to everyone and everything. Not at all, but if I was forced to choose one over the other. So I'm interested, where do you fall in this idea? And is it beneficial? I think it's personally beneficial to study this, to understand, because as I stated in the first session of this, I was driven into religion in so many ways, trying to find an ability to truly change my behavior and also, of course, how I was feeling. So if there are ways to do that, rational ways to do that, then I think it's important that we know them. I hope that you have already connected with the Hope After Faith podcast. It's on Spreaker, it's on iTunes, it's on Stitcher, it's on YouTube, you name it, it's out there for you to enjoy. This next week, we will be going into our third episode, and we will be talking about the subject, Father Knows How to Hurt Me Best. And so I think you're going to find it really, really interesting. If you are listening, thank you very much. If you've yet to listen, please give us a chance. And if you're enjoying what you're hearing, please share it. It's unbelievable how many listens we already have. This is what we've been working for. Paul and I have struggled now for over a year, putting out content, these types of messages, the gaming videos to fill in the difference and to lighten the mood, all trying to garner support to be able to do a project like this. So if you ever really wonder exactly now what it is that you are financially supporting, it is the podcast. So thank you very, very much. We love you so much. And as always, thank you for being brave.